Welcome to the Engaged by Design podcast, where we help you drive innovation to engage more learners more effectively. I'm pleased to be your host, Dr. Vernon Smith, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague and co-host, Dr. Michael Cottam.
Thank you, Vernon. Today, we are thrilled to welcome our friend and colleague, Bridget Davis. She's a certified project management professional, a Scrum Master, an Agile leader working in higher education, and as I said,
Yes,
our friend.
Bridget has supported us both at different times in our careers, and today she'll show how project management practices, both Agile, predictive, and a lot of variations in between, can be applied to the unique world of higher education.
Yes, higher ed is so complicated. It's going to take us a couple of conversations with Bridget to learn everything we need to learn. So today we're going to explore how to lead projects in a shared governance, committee-driven decision-making. Bridget Davis.
Bridget Davis, who is just amazing. Let me tell, because you and I know her, but let me share how awesome and spectacular this person is to the rest of the world. Bridget is currently a project manager at the American College of Financial Services. So shout out to all our friends and colleagues at the American College of Financial Services. It's a great institution, folks. Bridget is a PMP, meaning that she's a project management professional. She's a CSM, a certified Scrum Master, and a DASM, a disciplined Agile Scrum Master. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Bridget formerly worked with Michael and me at the American Public University System, but I have to say that one of the things as a provost and senior vice president there that Dr. Karen Powell did to set me up and for success was to assign Bridget to my office. And it made all the difference. I can't even tell you all the things, all the ways that her thinking, her foresight, her planning, and her excellent financial skills helped me in that role. And we did a lot of great things. Now, Bridget has a Bachelor of Arts in Religion from Sweetbriar College and a master's in Norse and Viking Studies from the University of Nottingham. Yes, that same Nottingham of Robin Hood. Yes, it's a real place, folks. It is a real place. Just been doing project management since she left me and went over to Michael's office in 2020. And she's been a project manager officially since 2023. And honestly,
I just need you to know that I won in that exchange.
Yes, you did.
That I got Bridget on my team. I won. That was awesome.
Yes, you did. And it was good for you. It was good for Bridget. So that was me being a thoughtful leader that was concerned about the development of his teams and his people. But, in that, I think Bridget has become just an absolute expert in Agile project management and concepts, and then adapting them to really sometimes difficult organizational contexts. So we just want to say, Bridget, welcome, welcome, welcome. Anything you want to say before we get going?
Hi, thanks. Hi, everyone. I have a background in Agile project management, specifically in the education realm, I would say, but I do want to say that both of you are excellent leaders and teachers along the project management journey. So just want to say that both of you have been incredible assets in my career.
So, Bridget, I just want to know, when you get your PMP, your CSM, and all of these different credentials that you have beyond your master's degree, do you have any special hat? You got some sort of a black belt or something? I mean, when I hear the word Scrum Master, I just think you must be a martial artist of some sort.
I think it comes down to being a nerd for project management, always learning and always trying new things, always being a continuous learner.
So you have your nerd badge. Very
Yes.
good. Yes. We celebrate these things together. Yeah. I had a great opportunity to work with Bridget as my project coordinator for 4 years at APUS. And I couldn't have accomplished all those things I did without her, because she was remarkable in all of this. I am so happy we get to talk together today. It's going to be really cool.
It's great. This is a
Me
privilege.
too.
We're so glad we got you on the show.
For sure. Me too. I'm excited.
We have to remember Viking Studies, though. We need to ask a question about Vikings because I had never worked with anyone who had a degree, a master's degree in Norse and Viking studies. So, Bridget, teach us, drop some knowledge and some wisdom on us. What is one of those things that we all think about Vikings that you want to debunk?
Well, I first have to say that it was one of the coolest experiences getting this degree because it was, again, a very niche interest. So I had the opportunity to do it and I did it. And it taught me a lot about discipline, especially in like creating a project, getting a degree. And so I think that's where my start in project management going started. But to debunk something, and this is something that you and I talk about all the time, is
Yeah?
Vikings don't wear horned helmets. There were no horns on their helmets because if you think about it, it's not very practical in battle. Somebody could, if you have a helmet with these big gaping horns on it, somebody could just grab a horn and snap your head. Somebody could just like take your helmet off and then smash you with their hammer. So that is something that always has always bugged me and every other Viking studies
You
person
mean
out
that
there.
Disney has been lying to me my entire life?
Yes.
And Marvel?
And yeah,
And,
and Looney Tunes.
oh my goodness,
Just-
I have trust issues.
yeah.
Now, Bridget, when we worked together, I learned about your eclectic view because I think this comes into it also. I mean, you have such a well-rounded background. And then I would see that you're a metalhead, and you talk about the type of metal. I'm sure you're still doing metal and that you love listening to metal. But I also then one day found out that you were a K-pop fan way before I think it was even like a big deal in the United States. You were a K-pop fan. What are your current music obsessions, Bridget? What are you listening to these days?
Yeah, K-pop kind of snuck up on me. It was something that I shared with my sister, and we just fell into it many, many years ago. But right now, I am currently listening to this band. They're from France, and they even know how to pronounce it. I think Ephemeral. I think that's how you pronounce it. But they are a power metal band or a symphonic death metal band that has a lot of sweeping guitar riffs, and the lead singer is female with growly vocals, which you don't see often in the heavy metal world. So I just found it just really engaging and really wonderful. And the really cool thing is that when they release albums, they have a lyric version and then an instrumental version. So if you just want to listen to the music without lyrics, they provide that opportunity, which I think is really cool. And it's really good, like, again, nerdy symphonic metal that you can play D&B to, or just think and get creative. So I've been kind of obsessed with them recently.
That is awesome. Symphonic metal. Yes, I love this. I love that. Now I'm going to have to go out and listen. So we'll have to post a link, Michael, on the show notes so someone can listen to this French. And je ne sais pas how to say their name, but we will figure it out.
Yeah,
Figure
I
it out.
recommend it.
Nice. You know, I got so many music recommendations working with Bridget that I don't know. We launched so many of our meetings with some reference to music. It made things a lot of fun.
You know,
So,
Michael, anything, we're talking about music and our listeners are going, why are you guys talking about this thing? The point is that no matter what domain of knowledge that you learn, there is something that can be applied in a different domain if you've really learned it. And it'll come up some way that you can use that. And so having this background with a really strong liberal arts background and this fantastic deep dive into an area, they'll still build the critical thinking, problem solving, ability to communicate, especially in written and oral communication, that really strengthen you. And those areas, even though it's maybe religion and Norse studies, right? It's going to transfer into other things. Same with K-pop. So moms and dads out there, don't condemn your kids for learning about K-pop because it's a exposure to a new culture and different genres, or metal. It's all something that you can learn from. So we want to encourage passion and learning. There you go. I'm off my soapbox. I'm off.
Thank you for that public service announcement there, Vernon. I appreciate it, for all the gen eds out there, all the gen ed students. That's awesome. Okay, so let's try to focus a little bit, which we don't do very well. Bridget, you've got all these certifications now. You've been doing project management, especially in the academic environment, where we're pretty weird. We have this shared governance, we have committee after committee, so many things that are not straightforward projects, software development, building buildings, any of those sorts of things. It's weird. We're strange. So how do you take what you've learned from all of your backgrounds, the things we've talked about, and your project management training? How do you take that and apply it to an academic realm? What works, what doesn't work, and what still puzzles you about project management in higher ed?
That's a big question. I think with all the training that I've had and recognizing that my background being in Agile, I'm now working in a predictive environment, a lot of different changes in how I think and how I do things. I've had them along the way. Um, so I think with my certifications, I learned with a mindset of curiosity, knowing that each project is going to be different, each team is going to be different, and each stakeholder within each team is going to be different. So everybody has different needs, everybody has different objectives. So to be curious and be listen and
So, Bridget, you have all of this background in project management, all these trainings and certifications and experience. And then you're working in an academic environment where we're not always structure friendly with our projects. So, can you tell me from what you've learned, all your certifications, all your background, what works in higher ed for project management, what doesn't seem to work, and what just still puzzles you?
Well, that's a good question. So I think the great thing about the certifications that I did get, they provide a really good framework for approaching projects with curiosity and approaching different teams and environments without, of course, there's structure, but there's not going to be a inflexibility in that this is the framework. Make it what you need to make it for your projects. In the world of academics, I think you have to apply that same kind of flexibility in the needs and objectives of your teams and what the value add is for your teams, and being able to be flexible enough to change processes and systems if things aren't working. One of the things that I've done with a lot of projects is actually creating systems and processes for teams to be more efficient and more effective, because we all tend to collect our information, get our tacit knowledge, and then go with it. And that can be great in a small scale, but in a large scale, that can be kind of difficult at the organizational level if there's a whole bunch of different repeats of the same process or gathering of the same information across 3 different platforms.
So it sounds like, Bridget, it sounds like you're not just copying and pasting a template from the PMI, from the Project Management Institute.
No.
You have to like use your own background, your skill, your knowledge of the people to create something custom. Is that right?
Yep. Yep, that's the one thing that I would say for anybody who's looking for certification. I think that's the first thing that I learned is you can have the framework and you can have the idea of project management, but the real learning comes from your experience. And I know people want to be experts right out of certification, but it's all about experience and what you come across in project management, because you can make a plan all day. Your project's not going to go the way you want it to, no matter how much.
You mentioned that you often have to build processes that are there. Are these processes that existed, or was there no process in place?
Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. They are processes that either we had an idea of how to do things, but the actual system and documentation didn't exist. So people knew what they had to do, but when a question came up where, well, who does this? Well, this is something new that we experienced in this process. Nobody knew the answer. So we had to really document and get to the details of this is the roles and the responsibilities, this is the process, and this is basically our guidepost, our navigation point to get from point A to point B. So kind of a hybrid yes and no answer, but then we also created entire processes where they didn't exist or replacing processes that ended up being inefficient previously. So taking the learnings from those processes and building new ones, we've done that as well.
Awesome. Thank you. I think it's really interesting. So a lot of this change management and process improvement are just naturally built into your expertise of project management.
Yes. Yes. I think that also goes back to my former life of being an executive assistant. So I learned a lot from that.
That's worse than project manager. That's everything. You had to wear so many hats, so many
It's a
hats.
tough job.
Is it,
Tough
but you
job.
were so good at it. Yes.
So
So, what have you learned from some of these twists and turns you've taken with, you've had to document things, you've had to do some reflection, you've had to build processes from scratch, create documentation that didn't exist. Are there some key things that you learned from this over the last couple of years?
I think the biggest thing that I learned, or am still learning, I should say, I haven't entirely learned it because I'm kind of stubborn, but and where we can blend agile and predictive frameworks in a academic setting. So, and this, that's a changing goalpost too. But for an example, I can think of a project that I did a while back. It was intended to create a consumer course for public consumption. And while we started the project with Agile format, we had a tight timeline. We had to meet deadlines. It was kind of a seat of our pants situation. So we used iterative Agile project management to create the course itself. So we had a lot of different stakeholders. Everybody had their defined roles and responsibilities, and we did iterative. So when one person finished their job, another person went immediately, while the first person went into their job for the next piece of the course. So it was a very iterative thing, which is really helpful. It condensed our squished deadline. And made it really useful to kind of get back on track. It kept people focused. It kept people on top of things. But the issue is that with Agile, there's this fundamental assumption that you learn as you go, as more information is gathered. So we were so focused on creating this course that we forgot what to do with it after and to plan for what to do with it after. So now
Oh
we have
my.
this beautiful course. How do we get people to enroll? How do we bring in IT? How do we build I don't know, a pricing model? All of that planning and strategic stuff, totally forgot how to do that and add that into our projects.
Wow.
So we were thinking we would do that as we learned, but got so focused on this course, we never started that process. So I think that was a big learning moment in really what does it mean when we try to incorporate agile and then predictive nature of projects, because the second half could have been predictive and started a lot sooner than once the course was created. Um, so we were back to square one with our timeline.
Bridget, can you explain a little bit for those who don't know the words? What does agile mean and what does predictive project management mean? So we kind of have that baseline understanding of what you're differentiating there.
Yeah, yeah. So agile really is kind of what it says. So you start out with an idea and you start ideating and building, and you, of course, have a framework to work through this with your team, but you really have to pivot as information is gathered. So you might not know what is going to be created at the end, at least with the way that we used it in our hybrid function. So we learned across the way and we built as we ideated. And then as it gets better, and really the function of Agile is to be flexible enough so that if you have a project and you know your end goal, you know point A and point B, and it takes 3 years to do that project, you want to be able to still create something that's valuable at the end. With the changing role and the changing functionalities of a lot of the industries out there, what we plan in the beginning and what we want to create might not necessarily create the same amount of value 3 years on. So being agile allows you to adapt and change with the changing environments out there. One example is AI. We have projects all across the IT field, and I am pretty sure halfway through so many projects, once AI dropped, projects had to change their scope, had to change and had to adapt and
Right.
really, yeah, and really have to adjust to the new environment that they were going to be in. On the other hand, the more traditional path of project management is predictive, formerly or also known as waterfall, where you do have a starting point and an end goal, and you have a structured plan along the way that follows dedicated phases of project management, where you spend one phase planning the project. Once that's all done, once you get approval, and once the plan is in place for the entire project, you start executing the project and you do all the work that you said you were going to do. Once that phase is done, you stick to the plan. You don't really deviate unless it's like a major life-changing thing. And even then, that requires a lot of approvals and a lot of conversations and ideation back and forth. But you do the work that you say you're going to do. Once that's all done, then you move to another phase. So it's really chunked out in a very linear way of doing project management. So I'm getting the
I
hang of that now.
Just
yeah.
a follow
Yeah.
up to that, Bridget. Are there areas that you've experienced in organizations that tend to adopt agile more and other areas that really prefer predictive or waterfall?
Yeah, yeah. So the IT field is known for agile project management. It is a kind of lifeblood for a lot of IT teams with being able to adapt and change across the way. A lot of other sectors, I have seen waterfall be the dominant format to use or foundation just because it's what is known and it's what's simple, easier. I guess people see it as easier, the idea of having a plan and not being able to like know what you're going to do and how is it going to turn out. That scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of industries, but I think there is a growing need for and a growing desire for more agility in project management overall.
Yeah, as I talk about it in my macro leadership book, I lean towards agile because of the environment we're in. Not because it's inherently the only way or the better way to do things, but because of the unpredictability. That's why I like the way that you're describing the opposite of agile as being predictive, right? We used to call it waterfall. So you knew where the water was going to fall at every stage. You knew what was going to happen. But when the environment is moving as fast as it is right now, you don't know what's going to happen. Technology being a change, policy being a change in higher ed, things happen that derail your project completely if you're not accounting for them from the beginning. And like you say, if it's a 3-year project, there's no way. There's just no way you could be purely predictive right now. But that blend, as you're talking about, might be the most appropriate way to go. When you can predict and you know, structure works fantastic. It's efficient. But when you don't know, those fast cycles of iterative work, focused iterative work, seem to work better.
Yeah, and I think it's a response to just the changing fields, as you said. I think things are just going so quickly in the workspace now across different sectors that there is a need to at least be curious and interested in um, agile processes and agile project management because um, it's great that you built the thing that you intended to build 3 years ago. Is it still useful? Is it still marketable? Is it going to be what you need it to be now?
Yeah.
So asking those types
Yeah.
of questions, I think, will really broaden the ideas around Agile.
It's often about the value that's provided to the market, to your learners, to your customers, right? Yeah.
Yep.
We'll get back to Bridget in just a moment, but if you want to bring these skills into your own leadership role, check out our macro leadership coaching, consulting, and workshops to get your priority projects done while you build your team's strengths along the way.
We can help you and your mid-level leaders match the right people to the right projects, build trust in their teams, and choose the right framework, whether that's agile or predictive for every initiative.
Yes, we have solutions to meet your needs, and you can learn more at engagedbydesign.com. Now, let's get back to Bridget.
Bridget, yay! I was just going to think, you talked about project management and we were talking about the different types here, but you're a Scrum Master. Yes, a Scrum Master. Can you talk a little bit about that role, where it comes from, and what that means in the Agile process? First of all, what's a Scrum and how do you master it?
Yeah, that's one of the first questions I always get. So, like, being a Scrum Master is really following a framework of Scrum, which is an Agile methodology. So it is iterative and incremental project cycles. So you have the way we've done it, we've had monthly cycles where we would, spend a week planning. We would have 2 weeks doing the work, and then we would have 1 week reflecting, making sure we actually did what we said we were going to do, and then start planning what we want to do next time. And we would do that every month. And so that it was still kind of learning as you going, but you're also trying to have a structured framework around it. And so being a Scrum Master is really being the master of the process. So in my role, I didn't do the work. I was not the subject matter expert. I wasn't the rock stars getting things done and doing the research and really pushing the project forward. I was making sure that people were following the framework to begin with, making sure that we were having our daily meetings, having our documentation that we needed to be able to make this framework viable and feasible and useful for us. And so that's the role of the Scrum Master. It's so much fun. I highly recommend it to anybody out there. But you also asked the origin, the name of Scrum. That actually came from rugby. So in rugby, when you are with a team on the pitch, the field, I don't know. It's like when you see all those guys with their arms around each other and their heads down and they're huddling. That's called a scrum. So that's where the term came from, because really it's about a team coming together and huddling.
I love the picture of it. And when I've had teams running a Scrum type of a process, I just picture you locked in together. The ref tosses the ball in the middle, and your job on the offense is to get that ball to the right person who can go and score. But the way you do it is by being locked in together. It isn't about a single person. It isn't a football huddle. It's just very different. But when they're all moving in the same direction, everyone having a slightly different role, but trying to move the ball forward and eventually trying to score in some way. And I see that in projects when it really works. Everybody is locked in. You're focused. You have the same goal. Everybody knows their part. You know what you're responsible for. The feedback is live and immediate because the other team is also pushing against you. There is no gap. There isn't, oh, wait for this to snap and then we'll run this play and run that. It's different. And I love the imagery for it. And just watching a team doing that focused work together is exhilarating to me. I love seeing it.
I think there's a contrast here that's very interesting between types of huddles, right? We talked about the American football huddle, where it's a planning and a telling and a doing. Well, it's like, this is what we're about to do, but rather a scrum, in rugby, it's not a planning necessarily, it's a doing huddle. It's an actual action and involved and engaged part of that. I knew what a scrum was before, but, I just thinking of those two metaphors, those two analogies of, the American football, which is a planning type of approach versus an action-oriented approach. Bridget, one of the things I'm interested in is the Scrum Master is, especially it seems, in the coordinating role, helping to develop trust and coordination. Can you talk a little bit about what you've learned about trust and coordination when doing these scrums.
Yeah, I think back to when we were really heavily focused on this hybrid approach, and it took me a long time to develop that trust and to understand what we were doing because Michael introducing Scrum to an organization, an academic organization, that was new and different. So, and a lot of people either based being not understanding or resistant to it, we had a hard time trying to get it off the ground. And I think, learning to be patient, that it's not going to be a system or a process that's going to be done quickly. It's going to take time. It's going to take consistency, and it's going to take, as a scrum master and a facilitator, showing up the way you're asking your people to show up. So you say you want to have this framework and format, stick to it. Don't deviate. You're going to send that communication when you send that, like when you're supposed to. You're going to hold those meetings and you're not going to skip them. You're going to ask your team to do the same and really, because you're asking a lot from the team. So being able to be trusted to do your part, I think that is a huge part of it as well.
I love that idea of the trust being built through consistency. When the scrum master is consistent in doing what they said they were going to do, you can start trusting that that's going to happen. I'm going to be asked these same questions every time we meet in a stand-up, in a huddle, right? I'm going to be held accountable for what I said I was going to do. And you build trust through the experience of doing it more than you build trust by talking about it. It's really very much an action first type of a methodology.
Yeah, I agree. I like what you said about accountability too. I think that was a big trust building factor too, because when you think of the word accountability, and this is something that I've learned along the way, is its definition. And I think with Scrum, it's a really great opportunity to learn the definition of accountability. You give people 2 weeks to do stuff. Some things are not going to be done. Maybe they planned for too much work, or maybe something just went differently than expected. Being able to have that trust and that safe environment to um, say, I didn't get this done, and not being blamed for it, and not being yelled, and just being asked, okay, why do you think that is? Trying to understand why, and then how do we fix it? And coming to the conversation with approachability and a curiosity and a relatability, I think, is a really big piece of building trust because once people know that they're not going to get in trouble for something, people want to contribute. People want to see this thing build and grow and succeed and get to the winning goal. So I like what you said there about accountability.
Bridget, Michael also mentioned the questions. What are the questions you ask as a Scrum Master?
I haven't been in a Scrum environment in a minute, but the questions that I do ask in Scrum and in project management is just what are, like, starting out, how do you see this going? What do you want to get out of it? What are our goals? What are our objectives? What are the nitty-gritty details of project management? When do we have this done? What's the expected? All things like that. But really getting to know people, how they work, what their preferences are, how they come to work roles and as people. I like to kind of ask people about their strengths, their Clifton strengths, because that'll help me understand maybe how to approach certain conversations, motivations for folks. But I really enjoy trying to understand a person and what their goals are in their role, both in the organization and in the project, kind of a design thinking strategy just to really like get in there and understand where people are coming from. So I ask a lot of questions just like, I don't know, do you like email or do you like Teams or do you like text? Anything as small as that to anything as big as like what do you define as success? Interview.
That's one of the things that I've admired about the way that Bridget runs a project is Scrum does have 3 defined questions for a stand-up, right? The very simple ones, and that's, you know, what did you do? And what are you going to do next? And what are the impediments in your way? But one of the things that I've admired and really value in what Bridget did was going beyond those to get at what does that person actually need to perform what they said they were going to do. Um, there is a point in my book that I don't name Bridget, but when I talk about the reflection activities and the need to have very honest and candid feedback, that only happens when people trust you. When they trust the scrum master, the product owner, and they trust each other. Because otherwise, those things turn into either silence or fights. One of the two. And one of the things that I watched Bridget do that was just remarkable was turn something that could have gone hot into something that was very much appreciative, collaborative, and productive when it could have been the opposite. So I love the way you answered that question, Bridget, because it was different and very personal. And I think that's powerful.
I do just want to say, I do ask those Scrum questions too. I
Oh, I
do
know you
follow the
do. I
process.
Of
know you
course.
do.
I
No, but
went way hard with that question.
you took
So,
it to a new level. You're also in your answer, you were talking a little bit about Clifton's strengths. How have you used Clifton's strengths in moving your efforts forward in your project management?
yeah, I've used them in some projects in my current role as a way to bring people together. I have had projects where people either haven't worked with each other before or they just have different working styles that didn't really mesh. So I did have a informal strengths introductions section just to kind of show that we're all on the same page and kind of reiterate a different approach to teams working together, recognizing that people have strengths and it might look different from what you consider a strength, but it doesn't mean that that's necessarily not a strength. It's just kind of like changing your mindsets a little bit and kind of easing any kind of tension that could come out of conflicting ways of working.
I think that's really insightful. It sounds like it's also a great way to prepare the ground, as teams go through that forming, storming, norming, and performing process, that having that time of reflection on who they are and what are the different things that it's not necessarily that their teammates trying to be annoying, just that that's one of their strengths that's coming through.
Oh,
Don't you
yeah.
love it when you feel like your strength is everybody else's annoyance? I have one of those.
Yeah, I think I do too. I think, especially in a different working environment than I'm used to. But that's what was great. For example, we had a team that, for me, I had a very difficult time working with this one person because their working style was just diametrically opposite from how I work. And it wasn't until we started having this strength conversation, I was like, okay, I get it now. I get why you're like this. I understand what you value now. I know how to approach you differently because this is your top 5 or this is your top first or second strength. So it helped me kind of check my understanding of appropriate like communication styles and be able to really get on the same level as somebody and really be able to build that again, that trust because you took the time to try to understand somebody.
Building that trust speeds everything else up. Stephen M.R. Covey wrote a book, it's probably been 15 more years ago, called The Speed of Trust. The premise of that is when you build the trust, you have to put the time in. Time and effort has to go into building trust. And that's mainly done with keeping your commitments, connecting with people. But you build that trust, and then everything after that is so much faster because you just don't worry about stuff, right? You're able to just go faster because you have trust.
Yeah, I agree. Everything we know about team building, about effective teams, have that balance in there. Michael, you probably ought to give your disclaimer here somewhere. Drop it in there that as a certified Clifton Strengths coach, I am not one, but I've used it for years, and I'm glad to see, Bridget, that you find it helpful in building and preparing the way if you're going to like go on a journey on this journey for a project, it's going to be hard and, 3 years maybe, and lots of resources and time and effort and blood, sweat, and tears that understanding who you're traveling with and understanding their strengths can really seems like it's a smart, wise move to do.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah, if you're gonna go on a quest, you might want to know who you're questing with.
Oh, you're bringing up one of those magic words. We're going to have to get to that quest language in a little bit. But I noticed in some of our interviews, Vernon, for the podcast with others that we've worked with in the past, the way that they approach projects, when you want something really big to get done, you have to put it inside of a framework. Choose the framework and follow through on it. My experience for the last 10 plus years has mostly been with Agile, and that when people got frustrated that, hey, my project isn't going anywhere, or I really want to make this big thing happen at the college, and they're just frustrated. Eventually, after they see how it works when you go Agile, they come to the team and they say, can you run a sprint for me? And that came up in one of our other interviews, right? With Michelle,
Absolutely.
that they see that you can accomplish things when you're focused, locked in together to get a specific thing done, and you're flexible enough to move with the changes as you learn. It just makes a huge difference. So
It creates energy.
I'm a big fan of Agile.
Yeah, it creates energy. It creates momentum. It creates, those other things that just really can break things through. And not that higher education or any other sector is stodgy or or brittle. Actually, they are. But
Really?
yes, believe it or not, as we've discussed before, right? The three institutions that have existed since the Middle Ages, right? Education, the military, and the church, right? So, hey, Bridget, you're spanning both of them, so that really makes sense that you were in Viking Studies and Norse Studies. You sort of bridged the gap there.
Oh yeah, and mixing that with heavy metal, that's what got me into Viking Studies. So it's like a full circle.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it.
So, before we go into our fun discussion, which we will get into about Dungeons and Dragons, before we go into that discussion, are there pitfalls or common problems that come up in academic projects that you can kind of predict that if we don't do this thing, there's going to be a problem, or if we do this other thing, there's going to be a problem? Are there some really common pitfalls that you run into?
Yeah. It's a good question. Yes. And it's almost a common sense answer, but it's you plan early and you plan well. If you don't go through intentional, focused planning, you don't have a plan. I'm sorry. You have an idea of what you want to do, but there's no path forward. It's not what you think. For example, one of the projects that I worked on, this was a while back, it was a project where it faced a lot of different challenges in and of itself. But I was brought on as a project manager while the team was technically in their execution phase. They were working through the work that they wanted to do. And because of all the conflicts that we were having with timeline and delays in decisions and things like that, we had a really, really squished timeline. So we had this urgency. We had a project manager who was brought on who doesn't know anything about what's going on, but still has to go through the documentation and still needs to form a plan, even though the team already has a plan. And we also had a team where they've been doing this for years. They knew what to do. They knew how to do it. And so there was a bit of since they're bringing in a project manager and taking the time to be able to plan something out because they were of the mindset, we'll just get it done, which is there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Though, if you want to document it, we need to talk about it, right? So, long story short, I had difficulty getting documentation in and getting the actual information that I need. I got information here and there, and it came in at different times. I would ask for an update here, and it would come in 4 days later so we had a really hard time keeping track of the timeline in that way. So I built what I could, and then we started experiencing difficulty in collaboration and in communication. So the purpose of this project was to create content, course content. So of course it includes, building the curriculum itself. We used external stakeholders, experts and SMEs. But we also had to use like instructional design. We had to use all of these approval systems and things like that. And we found that it was a kind of a jerky stop and go process because we had an idea of who was doing stuff and who was responsible for things, but one person would be working on something. Nobody got an update in 2 weeks. So I would ask for an update, and then a week later, somebody would provide an update. So it was kind of like a stop and go situation to where like it just wasn't working. So I wanted to see how the team would work together under the current circumstances. So I know if there is anybody in project management out there, they're probably asking, why didn't you not do anything? I wanted to see if it would work. I wanted to see what would happen without this cohesive plan. Recognizing that once it stopped, it just never started working. That was like, okay, we're going to stop. And I talked to the project leadership, and we were able to get on the same aligned ground of something's not working, something is not here. So we had to stop. We had to kind of stop the project and have some regroup sessions and redefine what we were doing. We had to redefine who was doing what because people were doing other people's jobs and other team members were not being utilized at all. So we had to redefine and form a structured process. Like, I'm sorry there's resistance, but we need this step, and then for this step to happen, and then this step to happen. And we need this approval channel here so that we could create a consistent flow of work instead of being at a stopgap when we
Yeah.
don't know why, you know?
So I'm hearing a couple of big pitfalls that you brought up. One, that there wasn't really a plan, but I'm also hearing that it was kind of an ongoing project that didn't have a project manager up front to try and bring structure to it. So in the first place, you didn't have someone who was running the project. You had a bunch of people working on stuff. And that lack of structure didn't lead to increased trust or speed. It led to more confusion and more, derailed or effort that didn't matter. Is that right, Bridget?
Yeah, it was. I think looking back on it, because this project has kept me up at night. I think with the competing issues of like a tight timeline, people were in an urgent mode. People were in a go, 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 not wanting to stop, not wanting to take a look at the bigger picture and plan out and create a cohesive idea of how we get to our success space. I think all the issues that happened and all the challenges that we faced, they weren't a reflection of the people or the
Right,
what the capabilities of the team, because obviously
right.
they've been doing this over the past several years. It was a symptom of poor planning. All of this could have been avoided if we had a plan in place in the beginning. We would have known that we had too much work to do in X number of months and we had to adjust our timeline. We would have known that we had to adjust our scope if our timeline can't be moved. We would have known all of these different things, and would have been able to adjust and pivot and really come together and get our project off the ground.
It
So I
sounds
think
like
it,
there were predictable elements that
yes.
because you didn't have a plan, you didn't predict them, right?
Yes. Yep. So that's one of the things that is a common pitfall. I like to say that if you think that you have a cohesive plan after just putting a plan together over a day or so, same thing with gathering your project requirements. If you think that you've done enough to move forward with the project, no, you don't. You don't have a plan. Go back and try again. It's almost the five whys. Go back and make sure that all the questions are answered, especially in a predictive environment, so that you can at least mitigate risks ahead of time. In Agile, we learn as we go, and that's why I ask so many questions, because if we know that there's still a problem, if we can try to mitigate it earlier, that would be super great instead of waiting for it to happen.
So, Bridget, that's been a really complex project. You had to do a lot of fixing, you had to do a lot of adjusting, bring the team on board. It's really complex and complicated work that you did. So, how did it end up? How did you end up winning, or what was the payoff for all that work you did?
Yeah, so once we did this, once we were able to regroup and actually define our processes and systems and get on the same page, the team flourished. We were able to open up our communication channels, teams work together more efficiently, get back on track with our timeline. And after that, we progressed nicely towards our goals. So we were able to save our working relationships because it wasn't easy on anybody on the team. So by stopping and being able to just have those conversations, we saved a lot of working relationships. Um, so I guess the big win was that we were able to come together and be the team that we were meant to be, with this plan in place. And had we had this plan and these structure and systems in the first place, we wouldn't have had to stop. And so by stopping, we just accelerated, just flourished as a team.
Yeah, my experience with teams is often when you have one of those hard projects, yeah, it's difficult in the moment, but then if you treat it well, if you treat everyone with respect and you pull everybody together, it ends up creating a stronger team in the long run because you didn't give up. You didn't get frustrated, to the point of giving up or sabotaging the project. You became a better team. Is that what happened for you guys?
Yeah, we became a better team and we understood the goal. I think not having a plan, you don't have a starting point. So you don't know when things aren't going right. You don't know when things need to be adjusted or changed in some way to get back on track. So being able to have that clarity, I think, and that accountability really helped the team progress forward.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this is awesome. Thank you for sharing your experiences here, Bridget. I mean, this is obviously a strength and a talent set that you've developed. And, I've seen it develop over time, and it's just like you've bloomed, and not only you flourished in doing this. And I'm sure that, whether it's education or other areas, you are going to be very adept at that. What a great conversation with Bridget about project management and higher education. I love how she explained the importance of building trust and documenting processes. That, I that's part of my soapbox, but even when it feels easier just to get things done, by documenting those processes, you use knowledge management to really add value, but only if you use it.
Absolutely. And her reminder that Agile isn't a one size fits all solution, it really stuck with me because I'm a proponent of Agile in most situations. But she's always setting me straight. She's good at that. Sometimes the predictive approaches work better when you can predict the outcomes and you can be really efficient. But sometimes agile cycles and iterative work works best. And often you actually need a blend of the two.
Yeah, it's really a contingency idea of how you frame it and what you're trying to get done. That's an important skill set. So, Michael, before we close, we always leave with a reflection question. Can you lead us through the reflection question this week?
Sure. So here's this week's question. How might you bring more predictable structure or more agility into your current projects?
That is a great thing to noodle on, to think about, and incorporate into your next week. Um, Thank you for joining us for part one of our conversation with Bridget Davis. Remember to like, subscribe, share this episode with a colleague, And join us next week for part 2 of our conversation with Scrum Master Bridget Davis. And remember, there are ways to advance your project skills if you engage by design.